Hello there, friends, and welcome to this episode of SelfKind with me, Erica Webb. Today we are going to talk about what to do when your mind and your body don't seem to be on the same page, why that happens, and how we can approach it in a way that doesn't leave us floundering. So I've been gone for a couple of weeks. I inadvertently took 2 weeks off of the podcast. You might be able to hear in my voice that I still have a bit of a husky tone. I lost my voice for a little while there and consequently could not record any podcasts. And because I was a little behind my schedule, there was nothing in the pipeline to release over the last couple of weeks. And so I just took a couple of weeks off instead. But I am back and I am so happy to be here. So thank you for joining me. What I wanted to talk about today was what happens when our mind and body are not on the same page. And I think that this happens reasonably frequently, less frequently as we learn to speak the language of our body and be willing to be in response to that. But when that is not the case, and even when it is, speaking from personal experience, even when it is, it can be a tricky thing to navigate when our brain is telling us one thing, our thoughts are kind of leading us one way, and our body is screaming for something in the opposite direction. And I think it would be worth talking about that today. So what I actually want to read to you is a Instagram post that I put up quite a few weeks ago now. And I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast, although I could be wrong, but it's never a bad thing to repeat oneself. So I wanted to read this whole post out because it will set up the context for what we're going to talk about today. So in the post, I said, I took a walk today that I didn't have time for because I've learned to trust my body more than my thoughts. My thoughts were telling me that the overwhelm rapidly filling my body was simply the result of not getting enough done. Therefore, work harder, do more. It was so tempting to believe those thoughts. On some level, they were true. Until the things are done, they're undone. So there's that. But my body was speaking too, more and more loudly as the day progressed. The feelings in my body asking for something to change were undeniable. My mind was saying, do more, and my body was freaking out. So I said, screw it to the to-do list and walked out the door. I walked in silence. It did nothing to tick items off of my to-do list, but it did a whole lot for my body, which is always the higher priority. This is self-care. This is self-kindness. This is the outcome of self-compassion. And when I returned from my walk, the to-do list was just as long. No surprises there. But I was not the same because I listened to my body and met it with respect. That matters a whole lot. This is living in a human body. This is navigating life as a highly sensitive person. This is what returning to an inner sense of home looks like. So I wanted to read that as a little bit of context, and I'm sure that you can relate to that. This feeling of having all of these kind of like churning thoughts saying, you must do more, you must do this, you must do that. Everything will be fine once you X, Y, Z. And meanwhile, your body is having a reaction to that pressure, that stress, that overwhelm that is deeply uncomfortable and doesn't seem to be conducive to doing the thing that your mind is telling you you need to do. So if I rewind to that moment when I kind of like left the house and went for my walk because I was feeling really overwhelmed, what I was really clear on that day, and any day where this happens because it's not like a one isolated instance, but when that happens, there is this feeling of, well, I'm in this state, I can't even do the thing that my mind is telling me to do. And yet my mind is relentless in its sort of persistence that the solution to that problem is just to work harder and do more and get the thing done that is causing the stress or the overwhelm. So this can be tricky, right? Because in our world, most of the time, we are inclined to believe our thinking mind more than we are our body. And because we kind of expect our bodies to work like machines and to never let us down, to never be sore or uncomfortable or inconvenient, it can often be our body that is dismissed rather than our thoughts. And in my opinion, we almost need to flip that dynamic a bit. Not to say that our thoughts can't be trusted, but often they lead us in a slightly questionable direction, especially when our body is giving us a very different message. So one of the things that's really interesting about the way that the body and the mind communicate is that it's very much a two-way street, right? So the brain is receiving information from the body and the body is receiving information from the brain. And what can happen in a situation like that where we're feeling overwhelmed is that we might have this thought in our head that says, I am so stressed, I have so much to do, I can't possibly get it all done, I don't even know where to start. And those thoughts have an impact on the body because the body's picking up that information and thinking, oh crap, there's a problem here. We have a situation that we need to mobilize resources to respond to. Meanwhile, the opposite is also true. So as our body goes into kind of a stress response, that information is also picked up by the brain and it might kind of set off this, I guess, cascade of feelings in the body that our brain then has to interpret and might say, oh, like the thing that's causing me to feel this way in my body is the fact that I haven't finished doing X, Y, Z. And so it kind of becomes this loop where what we're thinking impacts how we feel impacts what we think. And our brain, our mind, our thinking mind has to come up with a way of explaining how we feel. And so sometimes that might have, there might be a correlation, but not always. And that is a really interesting thing. Now, if we're in a situation like that, where our mind is telling us, do more, work harder, do not stop, and our body is saying, I am having a moment here where I feel completely dysregulated and I can't give you the kind of frontal lobe resources that you need in order to do this job well. We often will feel like we have to follow the mind's track of like, just persist, just do it, just get it done. But what would happen if we followed the body's wisdom instead? And this can be very counterintuitive because, like I sort of mentioned in that post that I read out, it's tricky to kind of make a link between pausing, walking away from the productive work that needs to be done to attend to how the body feels. Because your brain is telling you the only way to relieve this feeling is to achieve the thing that you haven't yet achieved. Now, you can extrapolate this into a really big picture idea, right? So like if we are feeling unfulfilled in life, that might be the sort of narrative that pops up as well, that until I sort of achieve this thing, this big scale thing or this, small scale thing, these feelings will not be relieved. But what if we follow the body's wisdom instead and we say, okay, here's what I know about the way that my body feels right now. This is a clear sign to me that I am dysregulated. I am outside of my window where I am able to do life, navigate life with a relative ease, right? It might not be simple. It might not be completely easy, but I have the resources that I need to go out and do the things that I need to do. When my body feels like this, I know that I am dysregulated. I know that I'm not within that sort of space where I can function well. I am dysregulated. I'm outside my window of tolerance, if we want to use that analogy. And if we are willing to listen to the body and say, okay, well, what do I need to then get myself back into a place where I can function with more ease? Then, we don't tick anything off of the to-do list, but we follow the wisdom of our body, and that can really change how we feel overall. So, to kind of paint this in a slightly different way, what we want to consider is that our body is always responding to signs of threat and signs of safety. And if we are having all these thoughts that I'm like no good because I haven't done this thing and I'm never going to get it done and I'm hopeless because I haven't even finished this email or whatever, then those thoughts act as signs of threat to our system. So it makes sense that our body kind of goes into a response as though it needs to fight something, run from something, deal with something. But that's really not where we have the most access to our kind of critical thinking and like higher levels of functioning. And so we might not be able to interfere very effectively at the level of our thoughts because our body has already gone into this state that says we are fighting something. There is something here that we have to be worried about, and so we better be on alert. And our thinking mind is kind of reinforcing that. And so it's not impossible to interfere at the level of the thinking mind, but I think it's often much more effective to go to the level of the body. So in that Instagram post that I read out, that's why I just like literally walked away from my desk and went out and had a walk in nature. What can be so difficult about that is that your brain will scream at you and say that that is not going to solve the problem. But we can interject, like I said, at the level of the thinking mind, or we can interject at the level of the body, because remember, how our body feels is going to influence what our mind is thinking. And so if we can be willing to say, you know what, in this moment, I'm going to trust my body more than I trust my thoughts, and we take that break and we do what it is that we need to do to regulate our system, we might just find that when we come back to whatever it is that's, causing us great stress, it hasn't necessarily changed, right? In the sense that we still have these things to achieve. We still might not even be 100% certain how to do it. If we're facing a really challenging situation, it might be that we're still like, I'm not really sure where to begin. But what we will probably find is that we have many more resources online once we give our body some information that says, it's okay, we're actually okay, we're actually safe, we're actually able to navigate this, blip in the day with some skill. And so we have to be curious about what happens if we listen to the body and know that sometimes the body and the mind are just simply not on the same page. Our mind is so influenced by the messages that, infiltrate all of our minds around what it means to be a good human. We are so influenced by the idea that we have to be productive in order to be valuable. If we're not busy, what does that mean about us? If we're not stressed even, what does that mean about how hard we're trying? And like I said before, it's not that we want to, well, did I say this before? I might not have. It's not that we can expect those beliefs, those thoughts, those influences to disappear. I think that's unrealistic. But if we're willing to be a little bit more interested in, I think that I'm having a bit of a thought here that in order to, be the right kind of person, I have to be more productive, or any number of different thoughts that could be influencing us, then even if those thoughts come, we don't have to be completely controlled by them. And that's the key. When it comes to our ability to navigate the challenges that come with being human, the challenges that come with being highly sensitive, the more that we can open up the opportunity for choice, rather than feeling like we are, some scripted character who just has to read the lines that have been given to them and just follow the logical path of thought, the more in control we will feel over our sort of nervous system state. That's not to say we are in complete control, because lots of things can happen that are outside of our control. But if we can foster this sense of I have a choice, then we are a million miles ahead of where we once might have been. So I just want to have a little look at my notes to see if I've missed anything here. Really what I wanted to, end on here is just a few little tips for what to do if it feels like your mind and your body are just not on the same same wavelength, right? They're not quite seeing eye to eye. Your body is saying no, and your mind is just like, just keep going, just do more. Here is the opportunity to like literally just be like, okay, my mind does not want me to stop, but I'm choosing to pause anyway. Recognizing the power of having a choice and not having to be controlled by your thinking mind. And then having a question to ask yourself, which is really just what would be supportive right now. Now, in some instances, it might not feel supportive or available to completely remove yourself from whatever's going on, but it might feel available to pause and take 5 slow breaths. It might feel available to just stand up and walk away and go and get yourself a drink of water. It might feel available to practice 5 minutes of yoga or somatics, or just kind of moving your body around in space. We want to be on the lookout for what supports my well-being over what supports just simply the productivity for productivity's sake. And then come back and notice, okay, how does my body sort of show me that I'm feeling? Not just what's going on in my mind, but what is going on in my body. Do I feel a sense that I'm more connected than I was before, that, you know, the choppy waters, I guess, that we might have been experiencing prior have settled a little bit? Do I feel more able to come at whatever it is that I'm facing with a little bit more conscious choice than feeling like a puppet jerked around by its strings? And it's funny because whenever, you know, I think sometimes when I give tips, they're often the same tips that I've given in other episodes. And there's a part of me that's like, give different ones, you know, but it's like at the end of the day, it is the same simple things that we all have to come back to time and time and time and time again. It actually doesn't need to be complicated in order to be effective. And that desire to kind of find more and more complex things kind of feeds into that idea of the productivity stuff in the first place, right? So what if it is just as simple as coming back and noticing, I have choice. How am I feeling? What am I noticing in my body? What would feel supportive? Can I do that? Even if it's just in a small little way right now. And then can I check back in with my body and notice if anything has shifted? And let it be an opportunity to be curious and an opportunity to be more aware of how it is that you feel. And yeah, the fact that sometimes our body and mind just simply aren't on the same page for lots of different reasons. All right, I hope that is helpful for you this week. It's great to be back with you after a couple of weeks off. I will look forward to talking with you again next week. But until then, keep being kind with yourself, and I will see you soon.